All right, so now we're going to dive into the qualitative part of chemistry again without the numbers. I totally love elements, and we'll see if you fall in love with them as well. Elements, you may or may not know, are kind of organized into a table called the periodic table of elements. So we talked before that all matter, actually all matter has mass and occupies space. Another thing about matter is all matter, and I'm just going to, matter in general is made up of what we call atoms. And we're going to talk more about atoms. Atoms have a center, and in the center they have protons and neutrons, and outside the center they have electrons, but that's an atom. So all matter is made up of atoms in general. And this says that an atom is the smallest unit of an element that retains the chemical properties of that element. So in other words, if you're going to, and people have actually split the atom, then you no longer have that element. You have a different element, or potentially a pair of different elements. So, okay, that's what we call nuclear fission. But elements, and we're not going to be talking much about that really, but elements, we said, are a pure substance. They're one of two types of pure substances. Matter can either be a pure substance or a mixture. And it's a mixture, it can either be, if it's a pure substance, it can be either an element or a compound. And we'll talk more about compounds too later. I'll put CPD for compound. So bottom line is, if you have an element, basically you can't break it down other than nuclear, what we call fission. You can't break it down any further by ordinary means. You can take a compound, make sure we're all on the same page here. You can take a compound and break it down by some sort of what? Chemical reaction. CHMRXN for chemical reaction. You totally can do that. While I'm at it, and I mentioned this before, you can take elements and build them up into compounds. How? Again, by some sort of chemical reaction. But for now, I want to talk about elements. Elements then are kind of our building blocks of matter. So I mentioned the periodic table. This is first glance at the periodic table. We'll be kind of dissecting the periodic table. Right off the bat, you can notice this kind of interesting little jag here. You can probably see these purples here. We'll talk about that. You can kind of see these kind of light greens over here. And then these are all kind of the same color. They have something in common. But the periodic table is arranged, let me go ahead and clear that slide, by increasing number. And we'll talk about what that number is. So you see a number 1 here, and then it goes to 2, 3 through 10, 11 through 18. So you kind of see that sort of thing going on. I'll go ahead and tell you, some of you are already very kind of familiar with how an atom is made up, like this, what we call the pieces of an atom, subatomic particles. That number, that whole number there, is the number of protons, okay? Protons are so awesome. Protons actually are kind of what element an element is, what type of element an atom is, I guess I should say. Some classes, I know students have said that teachers make them memorize the periodic table, and you're totally not going to have to do that. I'm going to tell you, though, that there are certain symbols and names I want you to be able to match up. So here are a list of 6 elements, the symbols and names. So when I say the name, obviously I mean this. And when I say the symbol, actually the symbol for the elements are letters. I say a single letter or a pair of letters. Okay, like copper is Cu, carbon is C. Now this slide emphasizes that if there are 2 letters, like copper has 2 letters, cobalt has 2 letters, sodium has 2 letters, iron has 2 letters, what do they all have in common with regard to the second letter? The second letter needs to be what? A lowercase. Okay. So a very good example is, if I were to talk about the element cobalt, I would do an uppercase C, a lowercase o for the element cobalt. If I were to talk about the compound carbon monoxide, okay, I would put a uppercase C for carbon and uppercase O for oxygen. So that's a good example why we need to make sure we're careful with our cases there. Now I just have a few slides to kind of show you some pictures of an element. We're picking on copper here. And each picture gets a little bit more magnified. So can we look at copper atoms? Well, it's kind of a difficult thing, but increase magnification, okay? And we do finally here increase, increase, increase. Over here, you finally see actually each of those kind of little lumps is showing you kind of the electrons as they are about the center of those copper atoms. So that's kind of giving you a sense. Now this video doesn't work for me, or I don't have a way to animate this video right now, but this is trying to show you an atom, and we'll be talking more about the structure of an atom, but hopefully you can kind of see the two colors in there. The two colors are actually represent the protons and the neutrons in the center. And what do you think that buzzy sort of cloud stuff is? Those are the electrons. And if I could animate this video, actually they would show you that the electrons are buzzing, 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 buzzing. Electrons are have a lot of motion.